Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. There's a lot of hype happening around automated market makers on the XRP ledger. And I am equally very excited about them. I mean, they bring so many benefits. I can't list all of them. There are too many to enumerate. But they offer better incentives to liquidity providers to make their liquidity available for trade. And as the results, traders have more liquidity to play with. That's great. However, automated market makers on other blockchains, and by other blockchains I mean Ethereum, are plagued with trading bots that exploit specific blockchain properties for financial gain. One of these properties is the fact that submitted transaction content is public. And because there is a small delay between when your transaction is submitted and when your transaction is finalized in the blockchain, these trading bots can make decisions and do certain attacks. The second part of the puzzle is the fact that transaction order can be influenced. On Ethereum, this is fairly trivial to do, as we'll get to the details soon. On XRP ledger, it is a little bit more difficult, but the fact remains it is possible to influence the transaction order. The final bit of the puzzle, I need to give a little bit of theoretical background to it, so I'll get to it in a second. But combining these properties allows these bots to perform what is known as front-running. And because it is a very big problem in Ethereum, automated market makers, and automated market makers are coming to the XRP ledger, I think it is very important to discuss and to chat about how front-running might look like on XRP ledger. So without further ado, let's quickly, what is an automated market maker? Just to have a very quick overview. So kind of at basic level, it is a type of decentralized exchange that pools two assets and then algorithmically determines the exchange rate of these two assets. Specifically for XRP ledger, the objective of the algorithm is to maintain a weighted geometric mean of the pool amounts constant. So it means that no matter how the balances of the two assets changes, the constant has to be, well, constant. So this kind of allows the AMM to simulate laws of supply and demand. So as as the amount of one token in one pool increases, it gets cheaper, but the one that decreases becomes more expensive. Conveniently, we have some mathematical formulas that allows us to compute how much money do I have to put into the pool to remove some amount of the pool, right? So conveniently, I call this swap out, and all it does is says, well, given the current AMM state, how many tokens, if I want to take out 2 tokens out of the pool, how much XRP I have to put in? The limitation, however, is it operates on the current state. So let's step away from the blockchain for a second and imagine you see in the newspaper an ad. And that ad says you can go to your local toy shop and buy a toy car for $10. Great. You don your hat, put on your coat, run to the shop, and to your dismay, you see that now the car costs $12. What you have observed is slippage. And it is the difference between the expected price and the actual price. On blockchain, this looks very similar. So at ledger 1, you see that you can buy 5 tokens for 2 XRP. You create your transaction, sign it, submit it, and by the time it gets executed in ledger 3, it fails. Reason being, because in ledger 3, now the same 5 tokens cost, let's say, 2.1 XRP. That happened because what you missed is that in ledger 2, somebody else bought just a little bit of the tokens, driving the price up. And slippage occurs due to natural market movements. Of course, the less liquidity there is in the pool, the more a single trade might affect the price fluctuation, but this is normal behavior. So what we need to do is to account for slippage, and the way we do this is by incorporating something called slippage tolerance into our trade. So now what we do is say, okay, I still want to buy my 5 tokens, but instead of buying them for the optimal price of 2 XRP, I will buy them for the price of 2.2 XRP. I sign, submit, and I execute my transactions, and then the blockchain will make sure that my trade is executed at the most optimal price, but that price cannot exceed 2.2 XRP. So if we set our slippage tolerance very, very low, well, then we can expect our transactions to fail, like I mentioned, due to natural market movement. However, the moment we introduce slippage tolerance, we expose ourselves to front-running. So what is front-running? Well, front-running is coming from traditional finance, and it is the use of insider information on a future deal for financial gain. So let's say I'm a stockbroker, and you call me and say, hey, Vito, I want to buy 100,000 Tesla stocks. Great, I see an opportunity for myself. And before I execute your order, I buy just a little bit of Tesla stocks for myself. Then I execute your giant order that increases the price of the Tesla stocks, and I sell whatever I just bought. And of course, I get into a lot of trouble, because in traditional finance, front-running is, well, first of all, it's unethical, and it is highly illegal. There are countless of articles and court cases of these big-name companies getting into trouble because, well, they did front-running. So on blockchain, it's a little bit different. First of all, it is the use of public pending transaction content to place a competing transaction before the victim for financial gain. And this fact that the front-runners are using public information causes a lot of debate both in industry and academia, whether front-running is good, whether it's bad, should it be banned, what should we do about it? There are a lot of opinions. My opinion, that it is, although it is not regulated, there are no official laws, it is unethical behavior. Being unethical, it doesn't mean that people are not doing it. On Ethereum, it is extremely competitive and very lucrative. But one of the puzzles of front-running is the fact that front-runners require a way to manipulate in what order transactions execute. And on Ethereum, this is, let's say, trivial. So transaction fees on Ethereum serve 2 purposes. One is to protect the blockchain from spam, denial of service attacks, and just noisy transactions. The other reason is to provide incentive to block builders to do their work. So to maximize their profits, block builders execute transactions by their fee, from the most expensive to the least expensive. So all the front-runner has to do is pay a higher or lower transaction fee than the victim, and that's how they can control where, in relation to the victim, their transaction will execute. Now, XRP ledger developers, they foresaw this issue, that this might be a problem. So instead of introducing incentives, the developer said, okay, we will not have any incentive for validators to do their work. Transaction fees are there only to protect the blockchain from spam and denial of service attacks. But because still the transactions have to be executed in some kind of an order, XRP ledger uses something that is called a canonical order. Now, I will not go very deep down the rabbit hole because it gets scary, but in general, canonical order is a set of rules by which transactions are ordered, and in essence, the transactions submitted by the same account are grouped together and executed by their submission order in most cases. But overall order in the ledger is pseudo-random. So this means that a front-runner, for the front-runner, is very difficult to predictably influence in which order the transactions will execute. What does this mean? Well, this means that now front-running is like flipping a coin. If the coin lands heads, the frontrunner wins. That means that their transaction executed before the victim. Otherwise, it tails, the frontrunner loses. So this is already great because front running on XRP ledger is much, much, much harder than on Ethereum. But unfortunately, canonical order is not a silver bullet. As we all know, transactions on XRP ledger are incredibly cheap. They cost, a single transaction costs less than 1 cent. So if all we need to do is throw multiple coins and hope that one coin lands heads, well, the frontrunner can use multiple accounts to submit their front-running transactions, and because it's cheap, they don't incur much additional cost, but they can still increase their probability of winning. And so in reality, front-running on XRP ledger looks like this. So this is on the order book, not on the AMM, and I will not go into detail what's happening here. And in my talk, I will not tell you how to do front-running. For that, catch me at the back. Maybe we can talk about it. But in essence, what we see is in the green square, we have the victim. And in the red square, we have multiple accounts controlled by the same entity doing the front-running attacks. The reason I can make such a big claim that it's the same entity is because, well, when we looked at where did the money come from to these accounts originally, it all came from the same source. And so, again, although front-running on XRP ledger is much more difficult, it is not impossible. It is much more difficult because of the canonical order, and it is much more difficult because of the consensus mechanism. XRP ledger uses a voting-based consensus protocol where multiple validators have to reach an agreement on which transactions to include. And so if a frontrunner would like to convince validators to start including their malicious transactions in very specific spots, they would have to convince 80% of these validators to include the transaction. And now, I've heard rumors that it's already hard enough to convince validator owners to update their software in time and to vote on amendments and so on and so forth. So convincing them to behave maliciously is out of the question. Okay, so we know what front-running is. How does it look like on the automated market maker? Well, the most popular attack is called the sandwich attack. It relies on the fact that a trade will change the AMM balance. So what the frontrunner does is before the victim, they place a transaction that buys just a little bit of the token, just enough to consume the victim's slippage tolerance. After the frontrunner transaction, we have the victim, whose transaction increases the price of one token. And then after the victim, the frontrunner sells their tokens for a profit. Simple enough, right? And, well, okay. Why does this matter? We know what front-running is. How does it look like? Why does it matter? What are the numbers? Let me show you the numbers. So on Ethereum, in 2022, nearly 600,000 sandwich attacks have been reported. The numbers for 2023 are looking even higher. It is very competitive. It's about 285 bots who did these attacks. And these bots racked up a revenue of $128 million. That is not a number to scoff at, especially when it's coming quite easily. And out of this revenue, $26 million were profit. The interesting thing is that the 79% of the revenue was spent on transaction fees. And so my opinion is that given the fact that XRP ledger transactions are so cheap, when the XRP ledger automated market maker reaches the popularity and the volume of Ethereum AMMs, we might see that these numbers on XRP ledger might be much bigger. By these numbers, I mean the profit, because, well, far fewer funds have to be spent on including new transactions. I don't have the numbers for AMMs on XRP ledger because they're not on the mainnet just yet. What I do have is a small glimpse on how front-running looks like on the order book. And so what we saw is that in summer of 2022, And one entity performed 4,000, around 4,000 front-running attacks using 3 accounts. It yielded a profit of around $3,000, and their success probability was 66%. Further down the line, the same individual, or entity, I should say, started doing these attacks at a slightly larger scale for 2 months, during which they racked a profit of around $21,000. Again, these numbers, when comparing to Ethereum, are kind of a drop in the ocean. But let's not forget that the liquidity on the current DEX cannot be really compared with the liquidity on the AMM DEXs. So again, my opinion is that when AMMs come out and when they reach the popularity of Ethereum, these numbers will increase. So to unload and relax a little bit, let's have a quick summary. So front-running is enabled by 3 factors. A, the fact that slippage is part of AMMs. So that means traders have to introduce slippage tolerance into their deals to account for slippage. The second fact that there is a way to game transaction order. On Ethereum, this is easy by paying higher or lower transaction fees. On XRP ledger, this is more difficult because there's no direct way to influence the transaction order. But what they can do is kind of a shotgun approach where they just throw multiple accounts at the ledger and hope at least one sticks. And because transaction fees are very low, they do not incur additional cost. They do not incur big additional cost. The final piece of front-running puzzle is the fact that transaction content is public. So it means that when the user submits the transaction, a front-runner can observe what that transaction is doing, and then in a small time window submit their competing transactions and make for a profit. But the good news is that the key components of some of the key components of the XRP ledger that are canonical order and the voting-based consensus mechanism, these things make front-running much harder, which is great. Okay, so I introduced a very, very, very big problem. What can we do about it? Well, it is not easy. The properties that I discussed, they are key blockchain properties to which solutions are not trivial. They require major overhauls to XRP ledger that I do not have the confidence to propose fixes just yet. Maybe next year in Apex I'll say something different. But what can we do tomorrow? What can you do as a trader do tomorrow to protect yourself? And me being an academic, of course, I will offer an academic solution. So what we have to do is ask ourselves kind of a very obvious question, but when I read the question, I was like, oh, how did I not think about this? And simply is, well, what will cost me more? Getting front run or losing the opportunity because the slippage that I set was too low? And the answer to this question is in this amazing paper from Switzerland by Loba Heimbach. And what they say is, well, the answer lies in the history of the pool. And the answer is in the fractional price change of the AMM. And what fractional price change is basically, well, block to block, how did the AMM pool price shift? How volatile it was. And there are 2 components. One component is, well, what is the probability that a trade with a given slippage tolerance will fail? And it is simply the percentage of price changes that are greater than the slippage tolerance provided. And so this means that if I offer a very, very low slippage tolerance, well, most of my fractional price changes will be big, so it means that my failure probability is big. If I set very high slippage tolerance, well, it means that my slippage tolerance is greater than most observed price changes, so the probability of failure should be low. The second part of the mathematical concoction is what is the expected price change? So I have observed in my window a lot of price changes. And so what kind of price change I should expect next? And what they're saying is, well, what if we simply use the average observed price change in the time frame? And so when we combine all of these elements, we get this pretty graph. And we can show it on a pretty screen. In essence, what this is saying to us is that as the transaction failure probability increases, the suggested slippage tolerance has to be greater. And when we set the slippage tolerance, well, then the transaction should not fail, and the frontrunner's profit should be minimized. So the great thing about this is that we can go and implement this tomorrow ourselves. Unfortunately, this will not prevent frontrunning at all, but it will minimize the frontrunner's profits. And it does not require any changes to the XRP ledger. Unfortunately, this is kind of trying to guess the future from what happened in the past, because we're relying on historic data to predict what's going to happen next. So your mileage might vary, but I think, and this is my opinion, using something smart, using something that optimizes slippage tolerance rather than using fixed values is far better than doing nothing. So this is all I have for you for today. I really appreciate your time and your focus. Thank you very much. And we have a couple of minutes for questions. Yeah, I would like to hear any criticism. Or feedback.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Okay, thanks for the nice talk. Could you imagine also doing a kind of transaction dusting from the trader's perspective? So instead of trading just 2 tokens, I trade 1,000 trades with 0.002 tokens. So because then fees eventually will become relevant for escalation.
Yeah, so if you are going to execute all of your trades across, so let's say you split your one big trade into 1,000 small trades, right? Do I understand that correctly? Yeah. If I execute these 1,000 trades across 1,000 ledgers, then I will reduce the frontrunner's profit. But if I execute these 1,000 trades in the same ledger, well, just that's a 1,000 transaction sandwich. It will not, the profits will still be the same. So it is not the most, there are works that then offer to randomize how these trades are executed. There's all sorts of things that academia is proposing, but it has its limitations. Thank you for the great question.
I may have missed it, but do you know how many transactions it took for that profit to be generated of that 21,000?
I do not have the number from the top of my head.
The reason I'm asking is because as transactions increase, there is a fee escalation also, transaction fee escalation. As we know and hope that the XRP ledger is not just about trading, it's also a payment system at its primary use case. So at what point of time can this game get so dangerous that normal payments, there is a recommended payment transaction fees, at what point of volume does it start getting affected, where I can't make a payment to you?
Right. So let's remember, so this profit was made over the period of 2 months. So continuously front-running every time, most of the times when there is an opportunity. So it's not that the front-runner is just spamming randomly the transactions. The second thing, from my experience, it is very difficult to get in more than transactions of 3 accounts at the same time, because it takes a lot of time to sign the transactions, get them ready, do all of the mathematical calculations. So the time window to get those transactions in is very small. So the fee escalation mechanism will not kick in. I'm not spamming the transactions so badly. But thank you.
Like a year ago, I read a thread on Twitter. It was about negative spread created by unfunded wallets. And when I checked this PDF of yours, I saw at the Frontrunning some unfunded wallets and some offers with unfunded wallets. And I was asking about, should it be possible to place an offer with an unfunded wallet? And could this be some part of the solution against Frontrunning?
Could you
The negative spread that is created by unfunded wallets.
could you clarify a little bit for me, just to make sure I understand you correctly, what you mean by unfunded wallets? Because
People set offers, make DEX offers, while while their wallet is unfunded.
right, okay. So what do I understand correctly? Is basically I'm trying to sell something that I don't have.
Yes, or try to buy something and you don't have the funds for it, and
Right.
then that creates a negative spread.
Right. So this is actually one of. So now you know how to do front running on XRP.
I'm trying to learn here. I'm trying to ask questions.
No, it's a great question. So this is the logic of XRP Ledger. So this XRP Ledger allows you to submit a transaction for tokens that you don't have, and if you don't have those tokens when the transaction is executed, it will fail. But the secret, as you probably saw, is that I submit two transactions. One transaction to buy the tokens, and then one transaction to sell the tokens. And if my buy transaction will fail, then my sell transaction will also fail because I don't have the assets to sell. But if my buy transaction will succeed, well, then my sell transaction will also succeed because at the time of its execution, I will have the tokens.
Yes, of course, but at the DEX you have all these open offers, and until this offer isn't cancelled yet, this creates a negative spread on the DEX. And is this? I don't know exactly if Frontrunner can use this to front-run. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out.
That's a very good question. I don't have the answer right here on the spot, but let's chat about this at the back.
And if this is the case, then maybe we should think about it to not let this be possible.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. Let's chat about this at the back. This is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm getting headache about this. 'Cause I'm thinking very hard.